Live from Western Kentucky University, capital of the Hilltopper Nation. Whether it's in the locker room or on the field, behind the clipboard or on the court, home or away, we've got you covered. Get ready to enter the Red Zone, your destination for all things sports, right here on Revolution 91.7.
Familiar sound of the Wednesday night. This is the Red Zone on Revolution 91.7. If you missed this lovely voice, sorry I've been gone for a couple weeks. Josh Holland here with Jeff Lightsy and Billy Rutledge. And fellas, we had some football this weekend and some baseball going on right now. Billy, do you have the Twitter feed up of WKU Baseball to give us an update on the Hilltoppers at Louisville right now?
I can definitely give you that.
Well, as you get there, last time we checked, Hilltoppers were smoking Louisville, and they're trying to go 7-2. What is it? 8th inning?
Yes, bottom of the 7th.
Bottom of the 7th, and the Hilltoppers are going for a 4-game sweep, including 2 against Kentucky, of in-state rivals. Now, we've seen them win games in Bowling Green before. At Bowling Green Ballpark, they beat Louisville on a walk-off 2 years ago. But really on the road, they've struggled, and right now they're at Louisville. And so by the time we get to our back half of baseball, you're going to stick with us because we have senior first baseman Ryan Church, who had an RBI in the first inning. He's
had more than that this game already.
Right, and he had another RBI, I think, in the 5th. So Billy had the chance to sit down with him earlier this week, and you won't want to miss that. That's coming up in the back half of the show. But first, fellas, there was some football.
Yeah, there was.
Were you there, Josh?
In spirit. Is that how we're going to start the show?
I guess so.
I guess I need to know that I'm going to call you out for no apparent reason.
Is playoff hockey more important?
Tell him he doesn't have enough iron.
I didn't go for playoff hockey. I just happened to be there, and someone said, "Hey, do you want box suite tickets to a playoff hockey game between the number 1 seed in the West and the Minnesota Wild?" And I said, yes.
And of course you said yes.
Because it would have been dumb to say anything other than yes.
I'm just saying you weren't. I'm just saying I was asking if you were there.
Well, we were there, Billy.
We were there.
We were.
Okay, all right. So this segue, I'll just hop off the show for 15 minutes.
Oh, it's just like the last Red Zones. All right, welcome to the Red Zone here with Billy and Jeff.
Of course.
Jeff, there was quite a game.
It was
Saturday.
It was
really
pretty good.
The boiling point of
who won? I didn't see it.
It was Western won.
The red team.
52-40.
Just in case you didn't know, Josh.
So the WKU team scored 92 points?
Yeah, they did a whole lot.
Nice.
All 92.
Continue, fellas. If you want to, if you want to do this, Bill.
Do you want me to take over? That's fine.
Yeah,
go
for
it.
Over.
Go for it. Take over.
It was a pretty interesting game, and really think the defense really stood out to me.
Yeah, they played really well.
And it was the first.
But they gave up 92 points.
Well, it wasn't 92 points. It was.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I wasn't there.
He doesn't know, Billy. He wasn't there.
Let's explain to the listeners how the actual
including
game
Josh
worked. It was the red team was all offense, and the white team was all defense.
I don't know why you're looking at me. I know how the game worked.
Okay,
Explain to the
listeners.
listeners.
Making sure you're not there, so I'm just wanting you to make sure that.
Billy, I'm not an idiot. I know how the game works. I follow the game. Just because I wasn't in the stadium doesn't mean I don't know the themes.
It's debatable.
So the white team was on defense.
Yes.
I had a 50% chance of getting that right just by guessing. Woo!
Well, not really, because
some
a lot of the games
teams do
before
alternate.
The spring game have been played differently. Willie Taggart used to draft players. It was 2 captains used to draft players, and the winner got a big steak dinner at the end. Which is a little bit more interesting than
that
this.
Is. Two-hand touch we saw Saturday. We definitely
no live tackling in the first half.
Yeah, it was all two-hand touch. You didn't miss much in the first half.
You missed 92 points.
Well,
scored by who was playing Western again?
Western.
Okay, so let's get over with this joke. We've established that 2 of you feel really, really good about the fact that you were in Houchin-Smith Stadium with an estimated 5,100, which probably means around 3,200. Okay, you feel great about it. Now can we talk about the themes of the game? Is that okay?
Yeah.
What was 5,100? Like the highest? It was the second highest spring game crowd total in Conference USA. And that
impressive.
was only to.
I believe all 5,100 were there because they were giving away those nice tanks, those Bahama Bowl champs tanks, and people were going.
Yeah, I saw Billy with one of those because it's real classy when you're a media and you go get the student fan package. You're one of the first 1,000 fans.
I went and got the tank top, and then I put it on, and I went to Thunder over Louisville that night, and everybody's like, "Wow, that's a great tank top." Nobody at Louisville.
No, yeah, I just think that
they were really. I saw somebody sell theirs for $20.
Ethically, it's probably the best decision to go use your student ID as a member of the media and get your tank top. And then take a picture of it in the press box.
You
see what happens when you start this precedent of just calling people out for no reason?
I'm not embarrassed.
Feelings get hurt, Billy.
My feelings aren't hurt, Josh. I think we've had a wonderful.
Mine aren't either. Okay, You mentioned earlier that the defense stood out a little bit.
Yes.
The first 7 points of the game were scored by the white team by the defense, and it was things like stops. You just stop in general. Did they score? Nope. You get points. Did you stop them on 4th down? There was a goal line stand in the second drive. Tanner Reeves had. They were turning the ball over.
Forced
the defense
fumbles.
was.
Some good forced
So
fumbles.
that's something you really like to see if you're a Hilltopper fan, because not only did WKU have trouble just stopping people regularly, but really in the first 8 or 9 games, they couldn't turn the opposing team over. So all of those themes really mixed together into a pretty good storyline for the defense, and Nick Holt was happy about it too.
Yeah, and it started immediately. They went on to total 2 turnovers, 3 defensive stops, a turnover on downs, and a 3-and-out in the first 9 drives. So immediately they made a statement. And then the curious thing to me is when the red team was able to start scoring is when they starting on the opposing team's 30-yard line. The first 9 drives started from their own 20-yard line, like maybe a touchback would start, and they weren't able to score. They were barely able to score, barely able to get it past midfield sometimes. And when the offense was pushed to the 30, that's when they were able to get all their points.
Now, contrary to that, it was 2-hand touch. They were calling a lot of plays. It looked like a lot of plays could have been broken for bigger yards because there wasn't any live tackling. We saw a lot of could have potentially been missed tackles. I know Western has a lot of playmakers who obviously could have made some of those defenders miss, but the defense did play really well. Some of the guys I saw that stood out was Joe Brown over the corner, the converted running back. He'll be a true sophomore next season, and also the transfer from UAB, John Tavius Morris. They made really good plays.
It's hard for that guy to not stick out.
Yeah.
He's large.
Yeah, he's very big, and he made a really big play, the first play of the game in the backfield, just gobbling up. I think it was Leon Allen. I think right on the very first carry.
And that's something that WKU didn't have at all last. Did you guys hear Brian Shorter, who played defensive tackle primarily for WKU last year, lost like 40 pounds during the season. He was playing defensive tackle at something like 250 by the end of the season and has bulked back up to like 280.
250 is a pretty light defensive tackle.
That's
really light.
That's what I'm getting at. And now you have
nice
about 330 for John Tavius Morris.
Yeah.
You've got 80 more pounds from one player in the middle there. Brian Shorter's still a heck of a player. He's bulking up a bit. So just those 2 interior linemen, that makes it so much easier.
It's for the ends to rush.
Exactly. And then for the linebackers.
And for the linebackers to get to shed blockers. Also, it allows them to be able to run freely and make plays. And you saw a lot of that by some of the linebackers some of the linebackers for Western go out and making plays. And that's something that those big defensive linemen will be able to help.
Well, I don't understand why there was no live tackling the first half. It doesn't make any sense to me. Western Kentucky's one of its biggest weaknesses last year was tackling. It was just they really couldn't wrap up. I remember watching the Middle Tennessee game, and it was probably at the peak of the worst.
It was
there
dreadful.
In the double, triple overtime game.
Right,
they ended up losing. I just don't understand why Brom wouldn't want live tackling.
Well,
that's all
because
practice.
he has Brandon Dowdy.
Well, no, I was
told
you can not tackle him, but the entire team wasn't tackling him.
No, you're already missing 2 running backs.
That was the concern. I talked to some of the players and asked them why didn't they have live tackling in the first half, and Brom told them the reason they weren't having live tackling was because of all the injuries. You have players like Anthony Wells out. Wonderful Terry out with injuries, and he didn't want to sustain any more injuries for his first team.
Look, the red and white spring game scrimmage, let's not act like this is some big thing for the team. It wasn't a big thing for the team. It was a big thing for the fans because they got to see it.
Definitely.
But in all reality, they could have seen any of the other scrimmages. I mean, WKU's been doing 2 or 3 scrimmages. They went live 4 times in 1 week, I believe.
It's just a
2
more
weeks
hyped
ago.
up scrimmage.
But exactly. So the fact that they didn't go live tackling the first half doesn't matter for the success of the team because they've went live tackling plenty of times over spring. So
I'm just saying you're attracting that big of an audience. You try to give them somewhat of a show.
This 52-40 is a show.
Well, they got the show in the second half, but it wasn't the starters. It was like the second and third team guys that did all the tackling. The starters, you didn't get to see them. I mean, you saw some of them like Taywan Taylor. He had a couple touchdowns. You saw Tyler Higbee, and of course Dowdy tossed it around for a couple touchdowns, but the starters weren't hitting it. It did kind of take away of a little bit from the fans' perspective, but it still was a pretty good show.
I don't know. You just tell me that the players draft each other and the winner gets a big steak dinner. It's just a little bit more interesting.
It does sound
It's a little bit another connection I can make with the WKU football team that I didn't have before.
Yeah, but you're looking at this from a marketing perspective. They're trying to have people on the field.
And yeah, they didn't want any more injuries.
You can't go through summer weight programs if you don't have a shoulder. It's hard to bench press without a shoulder. I mean, if you've got these guys injured because of a spring scrimmage, then you've just wasted 2 or 3 months of their weightlifting program. And the biggest point of emphasis for the Hilltopper defense has been weightlifting.
I'm just saying.
That's why they spread the spring over 5 weeks instead of 4. I think, it's cooler from our perspective, from the fans' perspective, to see tackling, but it's not more important to anyone on that team.
That is true, but if you saw that first half, I mean, just two-hand touch. I mean, like I said, some of those, I mean, it was very boring.
They could have at least played raps.
I mean, because I'm talking about some of those sacks. I mean, I was like, the quarterback will get touched on his shoulder and just beep, sack, or the running back will get touched on his towel hanging off the back of his pants, and they beep, blow the whistle, and I'm like, what is this? This is not football.
We're gonna cut that. Boop,
this is not football.
That's
man.
gonna be a recurring thing.
Yeah, just like it was terrible. I was like, this is not football, you guys. This is.
Well, I think one thing you can draw from a two-hand touch practice, because you can't tackle a player before they catch the ball anyways, is how efficient the offense is in the passing game.
Yeah.
And what really stood out to me is the fact that Taywan Taylor was one of the leading receivers, and also Nakari Fant was up there. I know that the second teamers, like the younger guys, are going to get a lot more playing time, but someone has to step in.
You still have to get open.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, someone has
And
to
they were
step in
running wide open
and take over for the 56 receptions, almost 700 yards, and 8 touchdowns from Willie McNeil. And it just seems like that guy's going to be Fant. I know he's a sophomore, but the dude, I mean, you've been out of practice a lot. When the ball hits Fant's hands, it sounds different than when it hits anyone else. Like, his hands are so strong, and I know that he dropped a pretty easy one in the game, but the catches that he makes over the shoulder one-handed, like, this guy's going to be special, and I think it starts this year.
There's a buzz around him, and he does have to work his way up the depth chart a little bit. I'm sure he's going to be right around 3 or 4 or somewhere around
But
there.
in this offense, 3
receiver.
or 4 is a starter, basically.
Exactly.
He's going to play slot. He's going to be right now he's second team slot receiver behind Nicholas Norris.
Yeah.
Nicholas Norris right now.
But think of those two guys. I mean, think of the offense on the field, no running back in the backfield with Higbee going up the seam. You got Nick Norris and Nakari Fant possibly on the same side in the slot, and then Antwain and Jared Dangerfield near the sideline.
With Brandon Dowdy.
That's dangerous.
That sounds pretty
Heisman
nice.
Trophy
Or-
contender?
Contender or on the list, because those are different things.
Well,
Contender?
he'll be contender. No chance.
No chance.
No chance
Do you remember the
at
numbers
all.
that Colton Brennan had to put up to be invited to the Heisman ceremony?
They're pretty ridiculous.
Like 60 touchdowns.
They're pretty ridiculous.
There's a chance.
I think Dowdy will have around 45 touchdowns still, though.
45. That's still pretty high.
I think
though.
he's going to have around.
Yeah,
40.
but 45 touchdowns for a Conference USA quarterback
compared to 60
gives
is
you a
big
couple
difference.
hand claps from national
Yeah.
media
'Cause
if
you
you
know-
throw like a 7-touchdown game.
Because
just
you know
getting
those.
riled up,
Because you know
Josh.
those Big 12
You
guys.
do that just by showing up,
or
buddy.
Big 10 guys.
Yeah, I mean, Dowdy's going to have a good season.
Yeah.
We have all talked about my stance on the situation of
how you think
many
that's
records
a
are going to be.
time thing that will how you think.
Yeah,
they would-
it's just, if you want to go back and listen to old Red Zones from 3 weeks ago, it's a probability
Hey,
thing.
they're on YouTube.
We're
The
not
last
going
time I was
to
here.
get, exactly. We're not going to get into that again, but I think that you're right. The live tackling doesn't happen anyways before you complete the pass.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at those guys, and then Jared Dangerfield, that dude might have a monster year if there's enough balls to go around.
You
Like,
know
if
what?
there's enough
He
footballs
can.
to go around.
He really can have a really big.
He's enormous. Him and Higbee are probably the 2 best NFL prospects on this offense.
Yes.
Dangerfield reminds me of a Mike Evans. He's on the Tampa Bay
Okay.
Bucks right now.
I can
Texas
see that.
A&M, big, lengthy guy.
That's your
He's got
weekly
some
Tampa
size.
Bay Bucks reference from Billy Rutledge.
Every time I got to get it in there some way, but
J-Bo,
he
number one.
can make plays and just kind of just jump above the guy. He is
Yeah.
so big and tall, and it's just kind of like Mike Evans does. And I was at the one of the scrimmages, and we actually tweeted out from the WKU Redzone. Dangerfield was not making many friends at the scrimmage I was at the other day. He was
No.
throwing the ball.
The one
in
where he
players'
fought
faces.
Prince?
Yeah.
Right.
The one where he fought
fought
Prince Aurora?
Yep. And he's
Who's
just,
like one of the nicest guys on the team. I know that there's a football switch that goes on when you get on the field, but if you're fighting Prince who doesn't talk, then there's something there.
He also got into it with Brandon Leston as well. Dangerfield does not make friends.
I don't
with
know
him.
if
Brandon
he's
Leston
cracking
likes to
jokes on
talk,
the
so-
field or
He does.
anything.
He does.
I mean, but he's getting this team fired up, and that's just another dimension that he brings to this team, either negative or positive. He's just still going to be a huge player in 2015.
Definitely. I mean, Dangerfield, he is going to be one of Dowdy's main threats. Also, but he does bring an edge to the team that no other player does. I mean, he comes in there. He's all business. He does not play any games. If you touch him and he doesn't like it, or if you bring him to the ground, they say no, bring him to the ground. He's going to let you know.
Yeah,
that,
and you need that
no,
on a
that's
team.
not
You
going to
need to be
happen
able
to
to
me.
hit somebody in the mouth.
Definitely.
On offense as well. You need a little bit of an attitude. You know, I know Brandon
An
Dowdy.
enforcer almost.
Brandon Dowdy's going to be looking for a spark on this team, and it's going to come from Dangerfield a lot of the times.
I just noticed, guys, I briefly mentioned Taywan Taylor, but we talk a lot about Jared Dangerfield. He's the biggest receiver on the field, and he's the biggest not personality, but like he's going to hit you probably.
Yeah.
as far as pads go. I'm not saying he's going to beat anyone up on the field.
Well, I hope he's done it before.
But
Ask Prince.
We just named Nick Norris, Nakarius Fant, Antoine Grant, Tyler Higbee, Jared Dangerfield. The guy who was second on the team in receiving last year, Taywon Taylor.
Overlooked.
Still on the team. He's still on the team, right, Billy?
Yes, he is.
I know there was some confusion on these airways a few weeks ago.
There was a brain fart, but,
But Taywon Taylor's still on the team. He was one of the tops in receiving.
Taywon's a beast.
And he's so quick. But is he going to be consistent? Because last year, Taywon Taylor had 6 games over 70 yards, 2 of those over 100 yards. He also had 4 games under 15 yards.
Yeah, and especially in this offense, if you have a few of those games where you're under 15 yards, somebody's going to step up and make plays. Nakarius Fant's going to come in there and take your spot. Not necessarily take his spot as the number 2 receiver, but he's going to get the yards. So they're going to go to somebody else, and he can't be not consistent this year if he's going to want to put up the same numbers as he did
Definitely.
last year.
I think during the spring game, although it was two-hand touch, you saw Taywon able to get separation. It was a lot of times he was running free. Somehow he would get separation. A lot of times it seemed like they were able to find mismatches. Him lined up against linebackers, and he was able to take full advantage. That's how he was able to score 2 wide open touchdowns, just making separation. He's really good at that, getting separation off the line, and also when he's running his routes are really good, and he also has great speed to get separation and get in for the end zone.
So a lot of spring football coming at you. We've got plenty more. One thing we haven't talked about, the back 7 of the defense. Linebacker secondary going to be really, really big for WKU this year. A lot of young guys, potential to play in those situations. We'll talk about guys like Masai White, Joel Iyebuniwe, just if we can say just Iyebuniwe over and over again.
Or Iggy.
Or Iggy, but I think it's just so much more fun
It is
to say the full last
I like
name.
saying Iggy.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce the last name.
I can't say the
And
last
also,
name.
fellas, we're going to say Iggy.
Yeah, we're going to say Iggy.
When we come back, we talked Tyler Higbee a little bit, but who's going to be that second tight end? Who's going to be the guy that comes in and blocks? Who's going to be the guy that can give you 20 receptions in the year when you need it in the red zone? We'll talk those two things when we come back in just a little over a minute here on WKU Red Zone on Revolution 91.7.